He thought her silence meant defeat, but silence is not surrender. Silence is an execution without blood. It is the moment before a storm tears open the sky, when the air holds its breath, waiting to see who breaks first. He believed her quiet was weakness. He mistook stillness for submission. But silence, when born from awakening, is not emptiness. It is control distilled into soundlessness. It is the soul reclaiming what noise once obscured. For a long time, she played the role carved for her by centuries of soft compliance. The woman who explains, the woman who pleads to be understood, the woman who turns her pain into proof of love. Her mouth became an altar of justification. Her tears were offerings to a man's fragile pride. He felt strong beside her begging, the way a god feels powerful when his worshippers kneel. Yet gods die when no one believes, and he would learn the same truth. He needed her reaction like air. Every outburst, every question, every desperate message affirmed his existence. Without her pain, he could not see himself. That is the male wound, not hunger for love, but terror of insignificance. A man does not fear losing a woman. He fears losing the mirror that reflects his worth. When she withdrew her reflection, his identity collapsed like a house built from smoke. But before she vanished, she broke. She screamed, wept, reasoned, begged the shadow inside him to see her. And the more she reached, the further he withdrew. Her need disgusted him, though it was born from the same wound he hid. The female wound to be too much, to love too loudly, to shrink oneself for the illusion of being kept. She carried this script in her bones until it became unbearable. Then something ancient stirred. The silence did not come gently. It was not peace, it was death. The death of the woman who apologized for existing. The death of the girl who tried to earn safety through obedience. From her ashes rose the witch, the siren, the one who understands that detachment is the highest form of desire. She became the mirror he could no longer break because it reflected nothing. She was not cruel. Cruelty requires interest. She had transcended the need to care. He came to test her calm, to provoke, to stab at the edges of her composure. His words, once intoxicating, now reeked of desperation. He mocked her indifference, calling it coldness. He wanted her to defend herself, to prove she still cared enough to fight. But she stood there unblinking. Her silence wrapped around him like smoke, invisible, suffocating, absolute. He spoke until his voice trembled. She answered with nothing. And in that nothing, he saw his smallness. There is no punishment equal to being forgotten by the one you tried to dominate. For the male ego, oblivion is annihilation. He will replay every moment, dissecting every silence, searching for a reason that doesn't wound his pride. He will tell himself she was broken, heartless, unfeeling. Yet every night her stillness echoes inside him like a curse, because deep down he knows she did not leave out of weakness. She left because he no longer mattered. Silence becomes the language of power when words have lost their meaning. When she chose to stop explaining, she became untouchable. No argument can reach a woman who has detached from validation. Her absence is not a wound, it is a throne. The dark feminine does not chase, she observes. She lets time deliver justice. For she understands what he never will, that attention is currency, and she no longer spends hers on debt. You too have been taught to speak to be loved, to soothe so you are not abandoned, to explain so you are forgiven. You've been conditioned to equate silence with danger. But silence, when born from awareness, is divine. It is how the soul resets its boundaries. It is the moment you stop bleeding for those who feed on your confusion. Tonight, sit in silence. Do not justify. Do not reach out. Let someone feel your absence like a funeral. He will remember the silence more than any word you ever spoke, because it dismantled the illusion that he held power over you. He will wonder what you're thinking, who you've become, whether you ever think of him at all. And the truth that you no longer do will haunt him far more than hatred ever could. The woman who stays silent is not defeated. She has simply remembered her worth. And nothing terrifies the unawakened man more than a woman who no longer seeks his approval. He walks through memories like ruins now, touching the remnants of her warmth as if it might still burn. But warmth does not linger where respect has died. The silence she left behind became an echo, repeating his own name until it lost meaning. He calls it heartbreak, but heartbreak is too kind a word. What he feels is exposure, the unbearable light of seeing himself without the disguise her attention once provided. She became the mirror he cannot shatter, because to break her silence would end. Ian confronting his own emptiness. He once mistook her need for love as proof of his importance. Now, stripped of her reaction, he feels the void where validation used to be. That is the unspoken truth about control. It is never real. It only exists while the other believes in your dominance. And when belief dissolves, so does the illusion of power. His friends tell him she'll come back, that all women return eventually, but he does not tell them about the way she looked at him that final night. There was no hatred in her eyes, only distance, the kind of distance that makes eternity feel near. That is when he understood. Forgiveness would have hurt less, for indifference is the true grave of attachment. Her silence was not passive, it was chosen. Every message she did not send, every explanation she withheld was a deliberate act of power. In a world that glorifies reaction, withholding response is rebellion. It confuses the manipulator, dismantles the narcissist, humbles the tyrant. For the one who thrives on chaos cannot survive stillness. He needs sound to hide from himself. You may think silence is absence, but it is the most potent form of presence. It says, I am here, but I no longer bend. It says, you no longer have access to my energy. It says, my peace is worth more than your comfort. When a woman reaches that state, she becomes something the world both desires and fears, untouchable. The witch archetype rises when softness has been betrayed too many times. She learns that mercy is often mistaken for permission. Her power does not come from cruelty, but from discernment, knowing who no longer deserves the privilege of her voice. Her calm is not submission, it is sovereignty. She no longer plays the game of emotional inflation, where love is traded for control. She steps out of the arena entirely, leaving him to fight his reflection. He begins to chase the ghost of her energy. Every woman after her becomes a comparison, a failed resurrection. They smile, they laugh, they adore him, but it feels hollow, because none of them hold that same stillness, the silence that stripped him bare. He starts arguments with shadows, apologizes to memories, invents closure through fantasy. This is how the masculine ego punishes itself, by chasing what it destroyed, never realizing the wound was self-inflicted. The silence becomes myth. He remembers her laughter as if it were scripture. He recalls her touch like a sin he can't confess. But the part he fears most is the quiet, the moment she stopped responding. That void was his judgment day. Every man believes he wants the mysterious woman until her mystery becomes his mirror. Then, faced with his reflection, he trembles. You listening now have been her. You have poured yourself into explanations that never changed a thing. You have tried to make someone understand who had no intention of hearing you. You've mistaken emotional labor for connection. And when the exhaustion consumed you, you finally stopped. That stopping was not failure, it was rebirth. The silence that follows awakening is not peace. It is power condensed into stillness. It is the energy that no longer leaks through apologies. You do not need to scream to be heard by the universe. The absence of noise is its own declaration. You have already said everything that needed to be said. Let your quiet now do the talking. He will never forget you, not because you were perfect or beautiful or kind, though you may have been all those things. He will never forget you because you disappeared without granting him closure. Closure is the narcotic of the guilty. Silence is its detox. You denied him the drug. You forced him to sit with withdrawal. That is why he dreams of you still. Tonight, let the silence speak for you. Let your absence say everything your words once begged to express. He will learn, eventually, that the woman who no longer explains is the woman who no longer returns. He remembers the night she stopped answering, the way her last message ended with a period instead of a plea. That single punctuation mark felt like a guillotine. No anger, no explanation, just the clean severing of connection. He stared at the screen for hours, waiting for the typing dots to reappear like resurrection lights. They never did. And in that endless stillness, he met his own reflection, the hollow man he had built from her devotion. The male wound deepened in silence. Without her reactions, he began to unravel. He checked her social pages, searching for traces of himself. Nothing. No quotes about heartbreak, no cryptic songs, no indirect mentions, just absence. The modern equivalent of a tombstone with no name. It was unbearable because his entire sense of worth relied on knowing he mattered. Her disappearance did not just reject him, it erased him. He did not understand it yet, but her silence was not revenge, it was transcendence. She had ascended beyond the need to prove her pain. For years she had bled in language, now she healed in quiet. Silence became her initiation into power, the ritual of becoming untouchable. She realized that the true opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. Hate still binds you to the other. Indifference severs all ties. Once she would have returned his messages, explaining herself in paragraphs he never read fully. Once she would have analyzed every tone, every word, wondering what she could fix. Now she understood. You do not fix what feeds on your confusion. She stopped trying to translate her heart into a language built for manipulation. Her quiet became her rebellion. He mistook her detachment for cruelty, as if she owed him softness after being starved of respect. But she no longer played that role. The old feminine script, be patient, be kind, forgive endlessly, had burned to ash. What rose in its place was the shadow queen, the one who does not plead, the one who does not explain her worth. She does not chase what must be tricked into staying. Her silence is her crown, forged from restraint. Every attempt he made to reach her only exposed his own dependency. He sent long messages dripping with nostalgia, tried anger, tried guilt, tried pretending not to care. Nothing broke the wall, because the wall was not built from resentment, it was built from peace, her peace. And nothing terrifies an unhealed man more than a woman at peace without him. He began to question his own narrative. Was he ever as powerful as he imagined? Or had she been the one holding the illusion together all along? Her attention was the stage light under which he performed. When she turned it off, he was left alone in darkness. That darkness whispered truths he had buried. He did not love her, he loved what she reflected, his importance, his control, his desirability. She was the screen for his projection, and her silence shattered the film. You see, projection dies in silence. Without response, the ego cannot continue its illusion. The abuser cannot feel justified, the manipulator cannot play victim, the narcissist cannot feel adored. Silence breaks the spell because it refuses participation. You, who once explained yourself to exhaustion, have that same power. The moment you stop reacting, you remove yourself from the stage. You let them face the mirror of their own emptiness. There is a sacred cruelty in quiet strength. It teaches through absence what words could never teach through pleading. It says, "You are not owed access to me." It says, "My peace is not a negotiation." It says, "I will not bleed to prove my softness." And this is what the dark feminine understands, that to be soft in a world that profits from your pain is to die slowly. She chooses instead the sharp mercy of silence. He will dream of her, of course. In dreams, she still speaks, still smiles, still forgives. But when he wakes, there is only the echo of her stillness. That is the punishment he cannot escape, the eternal question of what she's thinking. The answer is nothing. She does not think of him at all. Tonight, do not reach out to the one who wounded you. Do not check, do not post, do not explain. Sit in your silence like a throne. Let the world grow curious about your calm. There is nothing more dangerous than a woman who no longer needs to be understood. He will tell himself stories to survive her silence, that she is cold, damaged, unfeeling, that she plays games, that no real woman could detach like that. These are the lies men tell when confronted with power they cannot manipulate. He needs to believe she is broken because the alternative, that she simply no longer cares, would destroy the foundation of his ego. His mind becomes a courtroom where he prosecutes her absence, inventing sins to justify his pain. Yet deep down, he knows. She was the only one who ever saw him clearly, and that is why he cannot forget. He does not miss her love, he misses his reflection in her eyes. Her silence stripped him of identity, peeled away the masks he wore so tightly he mistook them for skin. That is why the silence haunts him. It forces him to meet himself. She became the unspoken therapist, the ruthless mirror of his unconscious. Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow. Most men never survive it without distraction. He will run to the next woman and the next, seeking comfort, but each encounter will be contaminated by her ghost. Because he is not chasing love, he is fleeing his shadow. And she no longer waits by the phone. The woman who once lived on the edge of anxiety now moves with the still grace of someone who has seen the other side of begging. There is no revenge in her, only clarity. She does not need to prove anything. Her silence does not scream, it breathes. It is the air after the fire, the calm after destruction. Power has no sound because it no longer seeks permission to exist. In her quiet, she becomes myth. The witch becomes the queen. The queen becomes the force that no longer explains. She does not try to be mysterious, she simply is. Mystery is born from boundaries. Her absence is her fortress, her distance a signal of value. What he once called cold is simply the temperature of self-respect. He imagines confronting her, demanding closure, seeking the comfort of an ending. But closure is a privilege earned through respect, not deceit. She owes him nothing. The truth is that he already received his answer in the void. Her silence is not lack, it is verdict. Every unanswered message is a sentence passed. Every unspoken word says, "I am no longer part of your story." And you listening must learn this art. The art of not explaining. The art of being misunderstood without flinching. The art of silence that cuts sharper than any argument. The wounded feminine wants to clarify, to be seen, to fix the misunderstanding. But the dark feminine knows the truth. Those who are committed to misunderstanding you do not deserve your voice. To argue with blindness is to waste light. You must understand, silence does not erase emotion. It refines it. It channels all the energy once spent on chasing closure into creation, into purpose, into the slow burn of transformation. The same fire that once destroyed you becomes the light that guides you out. That is individuation, the integration of shadow and self. You are no longer half of anything. You are whole, sovereign, unapproachable to those who feed on weakness. He will sense it even if he never sees you again. That quiet shift in energy, the absence of craving, the invisible thread between you severed cleanly without drama. He will feel the vacuum of your detachment as loss, even if he cannot name it. Men always feel it when the feminine withdraws her energy. They call it mystery, or allure, or magic, but it is simply the consequence of balance restored. Do not return to speak your side. The truth does not need defending. The ones who know will feel it. The ones who don't are no longer your concern. Let your silence teach where your words were once wasted. Let the emptiness speak with the authority of someone who has already buried illusions. He will try to resurrect your memory, but it will never be the same, because you are no longer the woman he remembers. That woman died in the silence. What stands now is something eternal, a witness to her own rebirth. And one day, when he finally realizes what he lost, it will be too late. He will understand that the woman who said nothing was the one who meant everything. Time does not heal his wound, it magnifies it. The silence that once seemed temporary becomes permanent, like a scar carved into memory. He tells himself he has moved on, yet every new face feels like imitation. He laughs at dinners, performs confidence in conversations, touches new skin, but none of it lands. The echoes follow him. Her stillness became a curse he carries quietly, a mirror hidden behind every woman's smile. Because deep down he knows he was not forgot. He was erased. Silence ages differently than sound. Words fade, promises rot, but silence lingers like smoke. It fills the space between thoughts, reshaping what he remembers. He starts to recall her differently, not as the one who needed him, but as the one he could never reach. Memory idealizes what the ego cannot understand. He paints her absence with holiness because it is the only way to survive its weight. But what he calls mystery was simply her detachment. What he calls love was just control. He replays that final encounter, searching for signs. the slight tilt of her head, the calm in her tone, the pause before her last word. She must have planned it, he thinks. She must have rehearsed that silence. But no, true power cannot be rehearsed. It emerges naturally when illusion dies. When she looked at him that final time, she was not acting. She was remembering herself. For years, she thought love meant endurance, that the more she gave, the more she proved her value, that the pain was sacred. But awakening reveals a darker truth. The more you tolerate, the more you teach them to diminish you. Her silence was not sudden. It was the final symptom of clarity. The day she stopped explaining was the day she stopped betraying herself. This is the moment Jung described as integration, the meeting of shadow and light. The old self does not vanish easily. It begs to return. It tempts with nostalgia, with softness, with the fantasy of reconciliation. But the dark feminine knows the trap. She understands that the return to pain disguised as love is regression, not redemption. She smiles at the temptation and lets it pass. Detachment is her new devotion. He begins to crumble under the weight of her indifference. Every attempt to provoke her silence into sound fails. He posts messages meant for her, cloaked in ambiguity. He stalks her digital ghost, hoping for acknowledgement, but nothing comes. Her silence becomes an ecosystem of its own, alive, impenetrable, divine. It is the final stage of alchemy, transmutation, pain turned into sovereignty. And this is the cruelty he cannot comprehend, that her peace was not built from his absence, but from the realization that she never needed his presence. His existence was merely the catalyst for her awakening. He was the fire that burned her into gold, the destroyer who unknowingly became her teacher. He will never understand that she thanks him silently for showing her the depth of her own resilience. You listening now must understand this transformation. Every illusion must die violently before truth can live quietly. Your silence is not weakness. It is the funeral of the version of you that begged to be chosen. Do not resurrect her. Do not speak her name in pity. She served her purpose, to break you open so the real could emerge. The world will test you. It will call your detachment arrogance. It will tell you that silence is cruelty, but silence is sacred. It is the discipline of self-worth. Only the unhealed interpret boundaries as punishment. The ones meant for you will recognize your stillness as strength, not rejection. Some nights she still feels the echo of his memory, but she no longer confuses longing with love. Desire can visit, but it no longer commands. Her silence has taught her to let emotions pass without attaching meaning. This is her final lesson. Mastery is not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to be ruled by it. He, meanwhile, begins to see her everywhere, in strangers, in dreams, in the rhythm of his own regret. But the image always fades, because she no longer belongs to the realm of repetition. She has become an archetype now, the one who leaves, not in rage but in stillness, the one who disappears without goodbye. She was once the mirror of his ego. Now she is the void that devours it. That is why he will never forget her, because forgetting requires closure and closure requires dialogue. She gave him none. And somewhere in the quiet expanse of her own solitude, she smiles, not from victory, but from freedom. The silence she once feared has become her home. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes.